First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many-fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
To know war is to know that there is still madness in this world. There are poor to be lifted up, and there are cities to be built, and there's a world to be helped. Yet, we do what we must. I am hopeful, and I will try with best I can with everything I've got to end this battle and to return our sons to their desires.
I thank everyone who acts in support of Ukraine, in support of freedom, but the war continues. The acts of terror against peaceful people go on. 1 month already. That long. It breaks my heart.
throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor. Kuwait, a member of the Arab League and a member of the United Nations, was crushed. Its people brutalized. 5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
We fly over the top of Iran and Tehran. Fighters and bombers all day picking targets as they choose. As our intelligence gets better and better and more refined. Looking up, the IRGC and Iranian regime sees only two things on the side of aircraft: the stars and stripes and the Star of David.
You've messed with the wrong country. Your propaganda doesn't work anymore. And the Iranian people have shown their resolve. They'll see this through.
Live from our studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Chongqing, China, this is Let's Talk Geopolitics with Cyrus Jansen and Alex Reportify.
I will tell you, you're not going to have a war with me, and you're not going to have a third world war with me. That I can tell you.
Well, there we go, gentlemen.
Welcome to. What an amazing intro. Alex, congratulations to you and your team for that nice intro. And everybody, welcome to a very exciting stream. We are joined by some incredible YouTubers and friends and vloggers. And everybody, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys.
Good to see you all.
Fantastic.
Right.
Well, we have so much to say during the week, except when we get on camera, we're shy for the first couple of minutes, but I'm sure we're going to get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm really excited to share the screen with everybody. It's been a while since I've connected with Daniel and Carl and Alex yourself. So first of all, guys, we're using some new software, obviously some new graphics, and exciting to kind of bring you guys a different kind of show today. So, I mean, obviously the entire world is looking at Iran. The big story that we need to talk about today is it does appear that it is imminent that we're going to see U.S. troops actually invade Iran. We're looking at a military ground invasion. This is really unprecedented, I think, for the United States to make this kind of move. It comes with extreme risk. I mean, we have all been watching the headlines. We've been conducting interviews. We've talked to military experts. And it just seems like it's going to be a very difficult operation for the United States. And it could be something that really backfires in Donald Trump's face, I think. I'm very pessimistic about the logistics of actually being able to pull this off. And I just do not see a situation where this is going to result in anything good for the United States. But I'm curious to get everybody else's opinion on, what's been happening over the last couple of weeks and, where do we go from here?
Well, let me step in. I think we're going to $200 to $300 barrel of oil is where I think we're going, and we're going there fast.
Well, at $200 barrels of oil, the world economy is basically broken. Right now, a lot of places are in trouble. Australia is running out of jet fuels, because they get 32% of their jet fuel imports from China, and China just said, "Hey guys, we need to reserve these fuels for ourselves. We're not going to export gas, diesel, and jet fuels anymore." So Australia just got cut off on 32% of their jet fuel supply. And the other largest supplier is Singapore. And Singapore price is going straight up. And this is across this is the same story across pretty much all Asia. Philippines is having fuel shortage. And what worries me is the fertilizer shortage, because right now it's a planting season. And the farmers need a lot of fertilizer to plant their crops for this coming year. And we need chemical fertilizer that's synthesized from natural gas. China also announced they're going to stop export of nitrogen potassium, because nitrogen is synthesized from natural gas. And China says, hey, we need all the fertilizers for our own farmers. And this is going to have huge ramification all across Asia. India has appealed to China to supply some urea. I don't know if China will say yes. And then Indian farmers will have some serious tough times in the coming year. We're going to look at food shortages all across the world.
I think it's amazing also that as this is all unfolding and all of these shipping routes are disrupted, you have the country that is the cause for this saying that, well, it doesn't really impact us that much, but it impacts everybody else. So if you want to fix this problem, you're going to have to step up to the plate. So they created this massive issue. And now they're saying, okay, guys, it's up to you to solve now. I think the dismissive language around that has just accelerated this realization about who you're dealing with when you're working with the U.S., even if you're one of their allies.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I saw a tweet that went viral. I think it really kind of sums up this entire war so far. It said Trump's top two goals in the war is no Iranian nuclear weapon and the Strait of Hormuz open for business. Just a friendly reminder, we had both of these before the war started. And I mean, it's just remarkable because I think it's a continuation of what we see from Donald Trump is he is both the arsonist and the firefighter. And this is just a continuous theme we've seen from the Trump. We go back to the tariffs. It's like, I'm going to put in these massive tariffs against China. The stock market crashes. And then all of a sudden, he's like, okay, you know what? We're going to reverse those tariffs. stock market goes up. He's like, guys, look what I just did. I made the stock market go up. It's like, yeah, well, you also created the chaos that made it go down, and now you've just brought us back to the same level we were before. But yet he kind of spins it as this political win, and it's just remarkable, how the entire Trump cabinet is scrambling, just like, guys, we got to get the Strait of Hormuz open. I think it actually, as Carl had pointed out, these fertilizers, these, obviously the gas and petroleum, but it just shows you how much leverage Iran has in this war when it is able to literally just close down this 24-mile wide strait that actually is the choke point for the global economy. And yeah, I mean, Alex, if you're talking $200-300 a barrel, but I mean, if we get up to 150, I mean, the world economy is going to be struggling big time. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Diesel prices yesterday, as I was driving in town, $6.50 a gallon for diesel. I mean, that is hitting American truckers very, very hard right now, and that is you can't function at those levels now. So I mean, if we're looking at where do we go from here, 2-3 weeks from now, a month from now, if we're looking at a ground invasion and even a higher escalation, it's gonna absolutely cripple even the United States economy as well.
Well, I just saw infographics.
Oh, sorry, Carl. Go ahead.
I just saw infographics posted on Twitter. He actually says, the diesel price increase in Philippines is 80%, and in United States is 41%. In China is 25%. So United States, even though U.S. all these talking heads, we're not affected as much. Look, U.S. diesel prices increased twice as much as in China. So yeah, people, Americans are still getting hit. Sorry, Alex.
Absolutely, 100%. and they're gonna get absolutely hammered over the next few weeks here. Listen, if this gets up to 150 a barrel, 175, 150 is about $16,000 extra for the average family per year. That's out of their earnings for the family of two. It's about 16 grand. You get up to about 175, 200. We're talking bankruptcy in airlines. We're talking bankruptcies in trucking, and we're seeing shipping prices. I was looking at a few websites over the last couple of days, and it said, due to the economic problems that are going on, we're raising our prices. And this is like, it was a subscription to some digital site that just email. I'll be with you one sec, Carl. And then also on top of this, this is going to, okay, if you're an American, this is what America First does for you. If you are an import-exporter in that country, well, the tariffs, you've been hammered. If you are in the shipping business, or let's say an Uber driver, you've been hammered. If you played the stock market in the last few weeks, you've been hammered. There is no way out from this one this time. And what the Trump administration used to do after hours is pique the interest of people, saying, yeah, we're close to the agreement. The Iranians caught on to that, and they said, well, that novelty certainly wore off, because we had 4 major guys come out from the administration 5 minutes after close on Friday trying to pump this market up. Nothing happened. And they are in deep, deep trouble. Cyrus, you and I have been calling this for a while. Look out, guys. Buckle up, because this is going to get real ugly real fast.
Yeah, I forgot to add another important point. Another important thing that Americans are going to hit on is generic drugs, because United States import majority of its generic drugs from India, and India needs petrochemicals that's refined from oil and gas to make those generic drug components. So, we're going to have grandmas in the United States not able to afford their drugs pretty soon, the longer the war goes on.
Yeah, I think it's just definitely going to be very difficult, I think, in many aspects. But it kind of shows you something that I talk about. I think all of us, I mean, we all know it's a global economy. There's so many different ways that all of our countries are connected, whether it's China, India. I mean, you can just kind of go back to the leverage that Iran has in this war. And I had a chance to interview Dr. Mohammed Marandi yesterday, and put that interview out on the channel. But he had said something that's really important. I don't know if everybody understands this, because one of the things that's interesting is in the United States, a lot of people are like, how does Iran control this Strait of Hormuz? He said, actually, you have to imagine this is not, it is not being patrolled by Iranian soldiers on the shores of the strait. These are being controlled by missile launchers that are up to 200 kilometers away. So they're basically monitoring everything. And I just think it's actually remarkable. That they're able to have that much leverage. And, I would actually say military dominance over the United States. I don't know if you guys saw it in the New York Times yesterday. It published that all 13 United States bases in the Middle East, 13 out of 13, are now deemed uninhibitable. And there was over 40,000 United States soldiers positioned in all of these bases. They now have to be relocated to hotels in the region because they have nowhere to stay. And so, it's the first time in United States history that we've seen, go into a combat situation and an enemy force be able to take out all of these bases. They're deemed unlivable. They're still operational to some capacity, but certainly not full capacity. But 13 for 13, Iran is able to strike those. We saw just yesterday another massive, I think it was a B-52, plane. Absolutely destroyed. It was $1 billion aircraft, completely obliterated. And it's just remarkable that Donald Trump and they are carrying out an extensive bombing campaign against Iran. They're hitting a lot of targets, but as Alex and I talked to Scott Ritter earlier last week, we're very good at blowing stuff up, but is it actually useful? Are we just hitting buildings? Like, we're good at bombing buildings and obviously targeting civilian areas, but the infrastructure. The thing is even another report came out that Iran has only used about 30% of their missile capacity up until this point. So they still have a tremendous amount of missiles in their arsenal. Most of the missiles they fired are some of their more older generation. But what's incredible is just the leverage that I think Iran has in this, and it's something that to me, it just shows you that the Donald Trump team, complete incompetence, absolutely zero plan going into this, and quite frankly, just absolutely looking for anything they can, and they're just not going to find it right now. They are absolutely caught with their pants down.
Yeah, I think I said this when the previous missile strikes happened. Before this war, it seemed like that was a test run to see if there was any sort of a significant reaction from Iran. And when there wasn't, I think they were led to believe that they could get away with a lot more than they really can. And if it goes as far as them actually sending troops into Iran, you just imagine how disastrous that would be. They weren't able to beat villagers in Vietnam or people on the back of pickup trucks in Afghanistan. And Iran is a completely different ballgame. It is going to be an absolute disaster.
Did you guys see that interview with Joe Kent by the chance yesterday? He had a viral clip about his comments on troops going into the ground. Did you guys see that?
I did see that.
No,
okay.
didn't see it.
So our viewers out there. So Joe Kent was the director of counter terrorism for the United States. Now, about 10 days ago, he resigned from his position, basically saying that I can no longer serve the Trump administration because, according to all intelligence that we've had, Iran was not an imminent threat. He came out and said that. He resigned. And what was incredible about this, guys, is he went on a podcast yesterday and he said, actually, if I was Iran, the best case scenario for me is actually getting U.S. troops on the ground. Absolutely the best case scenario. Because what's going to happen is that you are going to see a tremendous amount of soldiers that are going to be able to be, captured, held hostage, killed. It's going to be basically, Iranians want, the Iran army, they absolutely want U.S. troops to invade. And the thing is that we have to look at it from logistically. I was talking to Colonel Danny Davis yesterday. I've got an interview going out with him this evening on my channel. Danny Davis said, he's got the experience, right? He was on the ground in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, planning the logistics. He's like, Cyrus, I know exactly all the logistics on what this entails. He said, for us to do these military invasions in Iraq, we were staging in Germany. We took us from August to February to go through the logistics in order to actually, prepare for that invasion. So about 6 months of prep in order to do that. And obviously we've moved a tremendous amount of men. You talk about the logistics, think about water, food, supplies, all of that stuff, what it takes, just the vehicles in order to transport these troops around, the gasoline needed to power those vehicles. There's an incredible amount of logistics that are going on behind. He said for this operation, what they're trying to do is they're going to fly some Apache helicopters from the UAE, basically fly it 24 miles over the strait, land in Iran, get these paratroopers to just jump out, and then they're going to basically lift up in the air and fly back 24 miles. And I'm like, how could you possibly fly helicopters over a 24-mile body of water? They're just going to get shot down. And he's like, well, we're going to have F-15s and F-35s back them up, and But I mean, think about that, flying 50 miles round trip, trying to drop off troops, and then you get there, and I'm like, how much supplies do these guys have on them? It's like, well, they're going to have enough food and water for about 48 hours before they're going to have to get, resupplied. And I'm like, that just sounds like an absolute death sentence. I mean, there's no way that they're going to be able to pull this off. This is from one of the top military experts who has that knowledge of being in Iraq and Afghanistan and knows what it takes to bring U.S. troops on the ground. I just think this is an absolute catastrophe waiting to happen.
Also, back in the Iraq War, United States was able to deploy 250,000 troops to the Middle East. Well, U.S. doesn't have that capability anymore. They don't even have those army transport ships anymore. And this is why Donald Trump is trying to do this on, he only committed, so far I read they're going to commit about 17,000 troops, which is peanuts. I mean, Iran is a much, much larger country than Iraq. Iran has a population of 90 million people of mostly mountainous terrain. And 17,000 people is not going to make a lot of difference. But what I'm afraid of, this is just the beginning. Because let's remember, Vietnam War started, the U.S. ground operation in Vietnam War started with Operation Rolling Thunder, which was originally supposed to be a bombing campaign. And then they sent in 3,500 Marines to secure airport in Da Nang in 1965. And guess what? 3-4 years later, that number blow up to 500,000 American troops. And this is what I'm afraid what's going to happen, that this whole ground war operation in Iran is going to turn into a fiasco. And that's just going to lead the top brass to commit more troops, more resources. Because even during the Vietnam War, the top brass in Pentagon knew this is not a war that U.S. can win through attrition. But no one had the political courage to say, okay, this is not going to work. Let's cut our losses. So they let the war drag on, commit more resources until 40,000 Americans died in Vietnam. So what I'm really afraid of this, we're just at a very beginning stage of the war right now. If Americans are killed, this might prompt Donald Trump to throw in even more bodies to the problem.
Yeah, no, Americans will be killed. Americans are being killed. Americans will be killed tomorrow. Americans will be killed next week. It's going to continue. I mean, this America First thing, okay, how's that working out, everyone? I just saw a very, very disturbing interview with I think it was Fox News, and he was defending electricity being shut off in Cuba. Well, we want to kill people in Cuba so that we can choke the government in hopes to remove the government. Okay, for what purpose? How is that affecting you in your studio in New York? And it was, absolutely crazy. I want to just pivot away from the Iran stuff for a while and kind of talk about propaganda. All the gentlemen that share the screen here, we have seen our fair share of propaganda, especially when it comes to some of the latest stuff that has played out in the Canadian, I believe it's the House of Commons or something like that. I'm just going to pivot over to Daniel for a bit, and then we'll come back. And Daniel, you've brought a couple of things up on the show, and I think you prepared some stuff, and as well, Cyrus, I saw some of your notes, man. Wow, ready and prepared, sir. Over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good tie-in too, because with everything unfolding around the world, people become a little bit more open-minded to say, okay, these are bold-faced lies I'm being told about what's going on right now. So maybe all of the other things I've heard from my regimes, and I'm referring to America and Canada. I'm pulling a page out of Morandi's book. I love how he does that. So people are re-examining China also. There was a case in Parliament where there was an MP who questioned the Uyghur forced labor narrative in China. And I think we have a clip here. I think we can play that one here. Let's take a look at this.
foreign country that has been well documented by Human Rights Watch and even our own government for human rights abuses, and also to attack the credibility.
Question then is, you claim about forced labor in Shenzhen. Have you witnessed this yourself? Have you been there ever?
I've been to China many times.
Have you witnessed
since
forced labor in
1979?
Have you witnessed forced? Just a short answer. Have you witnessed forced labor in Shenzhen? Yes or no? So did you get that
I
from
work closely
hearsay?
with Human Rights Watch, where researchers did witness it.
So thank you.
In January 2021, Canada announced new measures to help address the risk of being complicit in human rights abuses in Xi Jinping China, specifically mentioned the Uyghurs. Now, personally, I find it alarming and offensive that a Canadian member of parliament will use his time not to protect Canadians, but to defend a foreign country that has been well documented by Human Rights Watch and even our own government for human rights abuses, and also to attack the credibility of one of the witnesses sitting here before us today.
All right. So,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, let's, aside from the oxymoron where this guy says, instead of focusing on Canadians, well, what does this have to do with Canadians anyways, to begin with? But you never see people questioning these narratives. And you would think after the experience of being continually lied to about certain things that are going on in rival countries, particularly if they're a rival to the US, that you would want to ask these basic questions. And nobody ever asks them. And this is a good example as why. Because first of all, he was attacked on the floor here by this other MP. But now he's being attacked by media. He's being hounded down. The Prime Minister is being asked questions about him. And it has just been a very painful experience for him. And that's why it's not even worth questioning this stuff. It's just, it's better to go along with it. Perfect example of that is in, when was it? I think it was 2021. There was a vote in Canadian Parliament to decide whether there was a genocide going on in China. And all of the MPs voted in favor that, yes, we're going to classify that there's a genocide going on in China. I reached out to 76 members of Parliament in Canada. I wanted to interview them to find out, well, what went into their conclusion? Why did they say this? And all but one responded. One of them said that they would answer my questions about this bill. One day before the scheduled interview, his assistant, the one MP who agreed to have an interview with me, his assistant started asking me questions and realized I would be asking questions critical of that determination, and they abruptly canceled and decided that they wouldn't continue with the interview. They didn't want to reschedule the interview. And, some people might say, well, it might just be because I'm not important enough. Well, I was important enough for them to then get the CBC to come after me. And the CBC, the state-owned media company of Canada, did a 30-minute interview with me, asking me questions about the Uyghur, genocide narrative and forced labor and all this kind of stuff. It was a 30-minute interview, and I managed to basically humiliate almost every single talking point that this journalist had. And I was also careful not to answer the questions in such a way that they could be cut out of context. The result was they could only use 3.5 seconds from my interview. And they used the 3.5 seconds of my clip to make it sound like I was answering a question that was not even asked, and completely took me out of context. Luckily, I filmed the entire interview, and I posted it online, after which the CBC received a lot of hate online when people were like, I can't believe that this is what you're doing. I can't believe that this is what you guys do. They received so much hate that they had to close the public comment section on their YouTube. And they said, due to abuse towards our journalists, we're closing our comments section. Never mind the abuse that they, when they took me out of context and lied about me. Bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so So after that transpired, the ombudsman from CBC, they apologized to me and they said that, okay, you know what? Clearly that was a complete lie. You were taken out of context. We're going to make a corrections note on our corrections page. Who's going to look at that? The damage is done. They put me on their biggest news program, The National, which airs across the entire country. So these are the mechanisms that are put in place to make sure that questions like the ones you saw there in Parliament are never asked. And I said before he backed down that inevitably he is going to have to apologize and back down, and that's exactly what he did. Luckily, the general public is starting to pick up on this stuff more so than before, and they can see through it. But from an institutional point of view, from the media, from the politicians, they are still as pathetic as they've ever been. I guess one of the bigger ironies, too, is that this narrative about Uyghur forced labor and Uyghur genocide is funded in large part by the same country that's threatening to annex Canada. And meanwhile, you have Canadian MPs still willing to carry the torch for them. So, I mean, it's completely pathetic. But, yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that.
Daniel, I remember that. I remember.
I saw.
Go ahead, Carl.
I saw that, and you know what? They went after me too. You know, they sent a journalist to write a story about me. Posting a podcast and also on Twitter about how this whole Xinjiang genocide is a hoax. And what they did exactly what they did to you, which is they interviewed me and they took my quote out of context. They tried to paint me as like this airhead bimbo surfer dude in Bali who is just singing the praise of China because I don't know what the heck is going on. And luckily, I also recorded the whole conversation and I posted on the web. I guess that has to be the standard operation now when you're dealing with Western mainstream journalists. But one thing that leads me to question is why are they resuscitating the whole Uyghur genocide narrative right now at this particular juncture? And I think the reason why they're doing that is to distract the public from the war that's going on in West Asia, the United States is waging on behalf of Israel. Because a lot of people are waking up to the fact and saying, we don't want to die for Israel. What you do? Okay, let's distract people with China fear-mongering stories. And I think that's what's going on.
But I guess one of the other risks, too, is that people might start to begin to say, are we the bad guys? And is China potentially the good guys? So as China is continually not getting in, I mean, for years they've been saying China is a threat to all of their neighboring countries, yet they've still not done anything. And so you can only maintain that narrative on nothing but theories for a certain period of time. And you can see all of the stuff going on in the West where people are China maxing or going through a very Chinese time of their life as they're posting on Western social media. I mean, you've got to do something. You've got to do something to say, no, guys, and try to re-inject some of this propaganda against China because they are starting to look like the good guys to a lot of people.
And I think that's been actually the biggest story that we're talking about China in the last 12 to 18 months. I mean, we can go on YouTube and you can see, for example, travel vloggers. There's been an absolute influx of, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of different travel vloggers whose job is traveling the world and making content. So all of a sudden, 18 months ago, China says, hey, what we're going to do? We're going to open up China. We're going to make it much more accessible for foreigners. We're going to open up, for example, the European Union, now visa-free to China. I talked to an American friend who was doing business in the Philippines, and he was able to get that 240-hour transit visa. And I asked him, how did that work? He's like, it's great. I landed in Shanghai, just right up with my passport. Within 2 minutes, I had a transit visa. I was able to go to China for, 4 or 5 days, check it out. And then, exited through Beijing and flew back to the Philippines. And so that's been a great move from the Chinese government. It's just saying, what we're going to do? Let's just open the country up. You guys come and see it for yourselves. And there's a huge influx of foreigners coming into China. Tourism is booming. People are seeing what's happening. We've seen this. I mean, this has been a continuous story. I mean, we saw the whole TikTok, Xiaohongshu, debacle last year where, millions of Americans started downloading Xiaohongshu and interacting with Chinese people, starting to see, oh my gosh, you live in what city? You have that quality apartment for, $500 a month? Like I live in a 1-bedroom, crappy apartment in Texas, and I'm paying like $1,700 a month, and it's terrible, and yet you get to live this, in a much better quality of life. We've seen, I saw this one really great interview. I think it was actually from the Wall Street Journal, where they had profiled this American teacher. She was 10 years living in New York City, and she's like, I can barely make any money. I relocated to Hangzhou. I'm an English teacher here. I'm making, my apartment costs $500 a month. Like, I just can't go back to New York anymore because my quality of life, I've literally 10x'd it by moving to China. And just, again, life is more simple here. Life is great. I enjoy it. And she had a great video about her life. And so I think that's what you're seeing is you're starting to see the United States media and the government realizing, guys, we're losing control of the narrative. People are not believing our BS anymore, that China's our great enemy. So, we got to stir the pot. Okay, by the way, look at the Uyghurs over in Xinjiang area. And it's really sad to just see how desperate they've become. And, the reality is I think in today's world, I think that there's a reason why YouTube channels are booming right now. There's a reason why people come to YouTube to watch, shows like this and to try to get an alternative view, because people aren't buying it anymore, guys. I mean, and that's definitely the sentiment here on the ground in the United States is people are realizing, golly, we have to seek alternative media because we know that the U.S. government and the media just can't be trusted anymore.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just propaganda. Propaganda isn't enough anymore. I mean, when you saw the buyout of TikTok's American operations, the algorithm has totally changed now. So you know what it's been about all along. That illusion of absolute freedom in the West is completely gone. People are realizing that there were always guardrails there. Granted, the guardrails were quite wide, but nobody was bumping up enough against them to have this experience. And with everybody learning about the reality of Israel on TikTok, that's when people bumped up against those guardrails enough for them to have to step in and do something. And that in itself is really interesting because now they've completely legitimized China's approach. They are saying, or at least the surface narrative that they used to force this sale was that the Chinese government could eventually use these platforms. They could use TikTok to brainwash the American youth. And there was no evidence of that actually happening, but there is evidence of Western platforms being used by the American government to do that, whether it be censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story when it was real, whether it be removing people off of platforms during the Hong Kong protests who were telling the other side of the story. Probably the most transparent thing that happened was when the U.S. killed Soleimani. There were people on these platforms who were talking about how he was on his way to a peace mission. They didn't have clearance from Iraq to make this strike because that's where it happened. And anybody who was giving that additional context was removed off of Western platforms. And why do I say it was the most transparent event? Was because Facebook and Instagram and some other platforms, they directly came out with a public notice and said, anybody sympathizing with the Iranian regime will be removed from our platform in order to comply with American sanctions. So we even had a case where there was a Syrian diplomat who was arguing with an American diplomat about what unfolded with Soleimani. And the Syrian diplomat got banned off of Western platforms. So that Syrian diplomat and American diplomat moved over to Weibo to continue their debate because that was the only place they were free enough to continue discussing that issue. It was in China.
I remember that. Yeah.
So there's been a lot of these eye-opening moments that make people realize it's not as advertised, and it's, things are not as free as in the West as they would like you to believe.
Daniel, I had a peek at your media kit before we hit the show here. You got a few more juicy ones in there. Would you like to share them now with us?
What else did I have here? Let's see. Oh yeah, with the Xinjiang narrative. So there was a video that was attached to this also. There is a fairly popular American female vlogger in China who married a Uyghur man, and she's been trying to get him a visa to the U.S. to visit her family, and they keep denying it. They keep denying him this visa. And that's quite interesting when they're pretending to care about Uyghurs so much. But the reality of this situation is that while everything was going on in Xinjiang, because there was a legitimate terrorism issue that they were dealing with, while all of these other countries were saying it was a completely fabricated issue, they wouldn't actually issue visas to people from Xinjiang. I have a friend whose son is involved in competitive snowboarding. They used to have a Xinjiang hukou, a family household book. And because they needed to go to competitions all around the world, they tried desperately to change their hukou to a different city. And they managed to do that. They managed to change it to Xi'an. And after they changed it to Xi'an, they were able to easily get visas to Japan, to the US, to all of these locations. So while these countries are trying to say that those issues that were happening before in China were completely fabricated, when it actually came to, to issuing visas to people from those regions, they would quietly say the risk is too high. So, I mean, I think that was a really interesting story too. Carl, I think you saw that story on Twitter as well, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But again, why are they doing this now? I think it's all these China stories, right? Because people are finally opening their eyes. Like you mentioned about TikTok. Now people, after TikTok was bought out in America, people are now saying they had more freedom when TikTok was under Chinese management. And it's true. Yeah. It's true.
It's very true, yeah.
And, I mean, kind of tie in the Iran angle is really interesting. There was a tweet from a Chinese Canadian vlogger. This guy, his name's Terrence Shen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He's got 1 million subscribers on YouTube, but he's very anti-China. This guy that's relocated to Toronto. And so yesterday he talked about the protest, the No Kings protest. Obviously, Americans are taking to the streets protesting against Donald Trump. And he says, look, this is direct evidence that Xi Jinping and China are actually funding Americans to protest against Donald Trump. And I'm like, is that what you're honestly tweeting about right now? Like, you think that the Chinese government is paying Americans to protest in the streets? And then his whole idea about that was that he's like, well, I saw somebody marching down with the hammer and sickle. That's obviously communism. And so I basically tweeted back at him, and he got absolutely ratioed. I mean, it just absolutely obliterated in the comment section. So then, of course, he did the only option he had. He blocked me on Twitter, and and I was just like, I'm like, this clown. I'm like, and it's like, you just see the desperation from these people. They're so desperate to try to tie China in, and and I'm like, no. I'm like, it's very simple why people are protesting in America right now. Donald Trump, literally the cornerstone of his campaign was no new wars. I mean, we go back to like 2013, 2014. We've seen videos of Donald Trump saying, look, any United States president that decides to invade Iran immediately should be impeached. This is not in the best interest of America. And so it is remarkable because all of us are thinking, okay, I mean, what is the real reason behind this? Is it really the Epstein files? Is it the fact that Netanyahu just has you by the balls? Part of my French, of just the reality of the situation. Like, what has caused you to make a complete 180? But I think honestly, when we're looking at the United States government right now, I just cannot see a greater example of complete incompetence and just absolutely zero plan. And guys, it gets worse. I was actually debating. I was actually on Saudi Arabia TV earlier this week. I was debating Marcia Sands, who is a former U.S. ambassador to Denmark. Boy, you want to just hear some of the most ridiculous comments I've heard yet. But you just see her towing the line, and it's just like, guys, I'm so honored to be here representing the Trump administration, happy to serve him during his first term as a U.S. ambassador. And we have just seen nothing but pure strategic excellence from the United States. This operation is actually going faster than we ever imagined. The operation is going great. Donald Trump is the peace president. Donald Trump is doing humanity this great kind. And I'm on air like, what are you looking at? Like, where can you possibly look at and be like, yes, we're doing good right now. This, America is actually winning this conflict. Right? We go back to the Wall Street Journal, 13 bases destroyed. Bombers taken down. First time in history, F-35, taken out of the sky. I mean, guys, the USS Lincoln, this is the biggest aircraft carrier in the world, multi-billion-dollar thing. The official report from the U.S. government is that there was a laundry fire. The dryer, the lint.
I remember that.
And the fire caught on fire, and we were unable to contain that laundry fire. Now that is back in port. It's going back to the United States. It's going to take 12 to 14 months to repair that. You honestly think that's what happened, guys? You think that a laundry fire?
No, not at all.
Come on. You got hit by Iran. You got it's crarazy.
Donald Trump just admitted it in a press conference. He said got hit by 17 Iranian missiles. Pentagon has this well-constructed story about how lit up a fire that took 30 hours to put out, and that everybody lost their beds, had to sleep on deck, and then Donald Trump just come out, Iranians got 17 missiles coming at us.
That's the funny thing about Trump, though, is that that's the funny thing about Trump is that at some point he has no filter. So and it was great because the clip is like, yeah, man, they're coming out of everywhere. Left, right, center, bang, bang, boom. They're just like, man, we were getting hammered. We had to get the hell out of there. And thank you, Trump. We knew that you would.
Hey, Cyrus, we have some clips backstage for you. You want to play some for the show here?
You know what? I kind of forgot the order. Just play the first one. We'll just react to it.
Okay, let's have a look at that. Our back end dude. Can you cue some up? Here we go.
We've won this. This war has been won. The only one that likes to keep it going is the fake news. The New York Times. You read the New York Times, it's like we're not winning a war where they have no Navy and they have no Air Force and they have no nothing. And we literally have planes flying over Tehran and other parts of their country. They can't do a thing about it. For instance, if I want to take down that power plant, that very big, powerful power plant, they can't do a thing about it. It's like, take me. That's all they can do. And yet, if you read the New York Times or if you watch ABC fake news or NBC fake news, you'd say it's a close battle. It's not a close battle.
I'll give the first reaction here. My only comment to that is the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Case closed. If the United States won the war, we would see a change in that. The reality is that Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. That is closed. Okay. Now the simple thing is that, again, when I was talking to Professor Morandi, he brought in a really great thing because he says, yes, you can. There's no doubt about it. The United States has sunken Iranian naval ships. Okay. They knew that. But we also are living in the 21st century, right? This is not Iraq 2003, where what do you need? Okay, we're going to bring in hundreds of thousands of troops. We're going to stage them on the ground. We're going to set up these military camps. 2003, there's no such thing as a drone. Okay. Now, all of a sudden, this war has changed, right? Again, an entire, multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier can basically be rendered useless in this war because you can just simply hit it with drones. And that's the reality of the situation. So, yeah, Trump's right. Okay, yeah, great. You can bomb the electricity grid there, right? You can take out their power plant, which, by the way, would be a crime against humanity, which the United States obviously has committed many of those. But the simple thing is that you cannot get the Strait of Hormuz open, and that is so for that clip right there, it's complete yes.
And the other thing he's asking for is he's asking for a 15-point deal with Iran, which in some ways is no way better than, or in some ways worse than, the original JCPOA that he tore up. So again, the same thing that you guys said, kind of setting these fires and putting them out. He's asking for something that was already in place before. But from Iran's perspective, it doesn't make any sense to stop this retaliation, because all it will do is give the U.S. and Israel time to regroup and just renege on their promises again. I mean, you cannot trust the U.S. anymore. I'm pretty sure we're close to a stage where the boy who cried wolf story will eventually just be the American who made a promise. It doesn't make any sense anymore to give them the time to regroup and reattack Iran later on. And the other thing that's happening around the world is places like North Korea are saying, you see, this is exactly why we need these weapons, because of what's happening in Iran. Libya is probably an even better example, because they listened to the calls to de-arm and to get rid of their large weaponry. And look at what happened to them.
Okay, let's play the next clip, guys. Sorry.
Wait. Let me do my guys. You know what Trump is doing, right?
What we're seeing is.
Okay, we managed to pull it back up.
Guys, you know what Trump is doing, right? What Trump is doing is every Monday before the market opens, he comes out and say, "We won, and then there's gonna be peace. We're having a peace deal. We're gonna talk to peace with them." And
Carl, most people think the market opens at 9 a.m. It doesn't. The derivatives market that controls the futures of that market actually opens up Sunday night. And that's where all the money is being made. Cyrus and I have covered that after markets, before markets. They don't do much during the markets because it's kind of useless for them. But no, these guys, people should be in jail. They should be in jail. And either we're going to get impeachment in the midterms or Article 25. I don't know. Anyway, we'll come back to you. Let's keep playing some of these clips here. I'm enjoying them. Fire away, boys.
And I think that what we're seeing is a situation where targetry never makes up for a lack of strategy. And by that I mean 15,000 targets have been hit. There have been significant military successes, but they are not matched by strategic outcomes. Now, some of the strategic outcomes early on, unconditional surrender, regime change, we're going to dictate who the next supreme leader is. Those were clearly nonsense. Those were delusional.
So again, guys, I mean, this just goes back to what we said earlier in the stream, and I think it's important to get these clips up. I mean, again, a top U.S. general here just basically admitted, yes, the United States is very good at hitting targets, okay? Obviously, okay, we've got fighter jets, we've got a bunch of missiles, we can hit a lot of stuff, okay? So yes, we're creating a lot of damage, but it doesn't actually result in anything strategic for the United States, okay? Great, we can blow up a bunch of stuff, okay? The regime is still in charge. Okay, this is again the delusion that we're talking about with these U.S. politicians. Marsha Sands, who I was debating, she's like, you know what? I'm really excited because we're waiting to see who the next supreme leader is, or the next leader of Iran is. We don't know who that is. And I'm like, what do you mean we don't know who that is? The supreme leader's son is already in charge. You don't know that, Cyrus? I'm like, we literally know that. What are you talking about? She's like, no. And she's just like, no, Cyrus. And then she kind of came after me. She's just like, Cyrus, I don't know why you're so anti-American. Shame on you for being anti-American. And, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, you get behind the United States president and you support him no matter what. And I said, no, I'm like, Marsha, that's not how being a U.S. citizen works. And my freedom as a U.S. citizen is to criticize my government and to certainly criticize my president if I don't agree with him. And the thing is you're talking, like rainbows and excuse me. I'm saying you're talking about like rainbows and unicorns. Like, she said, in the next couple of months, we're going to have a regime change. We're going to have this thriving democracy. Just imagine we're going to have millions of Iranians lining up at the polls in Iran. I'm like, Marsha, none of what you're talking about makes any sense. You're talking everything hypothetical, but there's nothing that points to that as becoming a reality. This could be your dream or your wish or your desire. But again, like, here's the problem. Day one, we want a regime change in Iran. Very quickly, day three, okay, you know what? We're not after regime change. You know what? Let's kind of shift the goalposts here. Maybe we're going to go no nuclear weapons. That's what we want now. So again, this is, the general says it. We can hit a lot of targets. It doesn't actually result in anything strategically being accomplished.
Interesting.
They had no plans going in. We know this because the U.S.'s own strategic oil reserve, they had drawing down since Biden days. Well, Trump didn't even bother to fill up the U.S. strategic oil reserve before starting the war because they thought it's going to be a short war. And I think it's because their operation in Venezuela got to their head. They thought, oh, this is easy. We'll just do decapitation strike and the rest of the Iranian government will fall in line. Well, that's not what happened. Well, now they don't know what to do because they have no plan after that. Their plan was decapitation strike, regime change. Voila. Well, that did not happen. And guess what? Now they're scrambling, thinking, oh, we're going to go take Iran's island, the Kars Island. The freaking island is deep inside the Persian Gulf. You have to go through the Strait of Hormuz to get to the island. Right now, the U.S. have 4 actively deployed aircraft carriers. U.S. mostly have 11, but only 4 are actively deployed. And out of those 4 aircraft carrier attack group, 2 of them are in the area, in the area around Iran, but one, USS Ford, as you pointed out, Cyrus, got taken out by Linfire, by the laundry room fire. And the other one, USS Lincoln, put 1,000 kilometers between it and the Iranian coast. Right now, it's hiding behind Oman, behind the mountains of Oman, so it can't be hit. So right now, to talk about somehow U.S. is going to magically capture Kars Island is I think that's fantasy talk. I mean,
not happening.
There might be a reason why they're moving 82nd Airborne, but again, they're going to have to stage the attack from Kuwait, as you guys said. You are sitting ducks while you are dropping from the planes. And even today, U.S. do not have air superiority over Iranian airspace. This is why, if you look at their target list, most of the target lists are down the western half of Iran. This is because all this U.S. plane that fly very close to Iranian border and they fire the standoff munitions like cruise missiles, try to hit the target inside Iran. But the reason they don't actually fly into Iranian airspace is because they do not have air superiority. And then they also run into the problem of they're running low on the ammunition stock of the especially cruise missiles and the missile interceptors. They knew all this going into the war, yet they thought this is going to be a cakewalk, right?
And
there's no plan.
On the topic
Should we move
of
on to
regime change,
after
also,
we're done?
On the topic of regime change, an operation like this completely backfires because even if there was a movement on the ground where people said, you know what, it's time for something new. And if there was a movement on the ground where the people decided that they needed their government to change, that's completely gone. Because when these kinds of things happen, they rally together. I mean, when you hit a girls' school and kill a bunch of schoolgirls and then wait until their parents are ready to come and try to pick up the survivors and then hit them again, what do you think that does? It does the same thing that sanctions does to countries also. It backfires. When you have the U.S. trying to starve out a population through sanctions, they found through studies that it actually, what their hope is that it will cause people to suffer and rise up against their government. But in reality, it actually causes the opposite, where it causes people to rally together against this outside threat. And so if there was any chance of any sort of natural revolution on the ground, that's been killed by this operation also.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, go ahead.
Let's move on to the.
Wait.
Okay,
What's Carl's tweet? I got to hear this.
No. I actually saw a tweet on Twitter. There was a Iranian exile, Iranian diaspora girl in Europe. She said, I owe apology to the Ayatollah because I participated in all the protests in the last 10 years. But now I know I am wrong. You know, I cannot stand all these idiots who are in the diaspora who are still calling for bombing of their homeland because it's our people that's been bombed. Like this is, you are not going to bring democracy to Iran through bomb. And I mean,
yeah,
that's
you can't bomb
absolutely
people
correct.
to freedom.
All the protests disappeared, completely disappeared now after U.S. bombing started.
Yep. Let's move on. We got some more clips, guys. We got some more great clips here. Let's play. Now, is that okay, Cyrus? Here we go.
I think that what we're seeing is a situation.
Wrong clip.
Yeah, we're getting there. Here we go.
Here we go. This is guys. I don't know if you saw this one. So this one is brilliant. This is a great. So Iran is doing an amazing job of trolling the United States government. Donald Trump was asked, well, the strait's closed, and he goes, nope, it's going to be opened. Who's going to control it? Well, me. I'm going to control it. I'm going to work with the Ayatollah. So the Iranian government literally trolls Donald Trump by showing a picture of a steering wheel with a little baby one. That way, like when your kid is sitting in the passenger seat, it's like they can pretend that they're driving too. I mean, you have it's remarkable. It is remarkable that the Iranian government, and again, like. It's just and so this, I got to find this debate of when I was debating this Marsha Sands and share it with you guys because it's just comic gold. She's just like Cyrus again. She keeps hammering me, on Cyrus, why are you so anti-American? And I'm like, I'm not anti-American. I'm more pro-American than you are because I'm realizing what an absolute idiotic mistake we're making, and I'm trying to warn us and say, no, don't do this. But you're here in Fantasyland thinking that Donald Trump's going to control the strait, and I'm going to work with the Ayatollah. That's not happening. Give me a break, And I said, in a serious note, I said, Marsha, name me one campaign that we've been successful where we bomb the people, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, thanks for killing our innocent women and children. You know what? We're going to take your advice. Let's go ahead and start a democracy. We've never bombed a country. It has never been successful in the history of the United States where we have launched an air campaign and it has resulted in regime change. And then you got a clip from Ted Cruz. You got a clip from Ted Cruz where he says, hey, guys, I'm very bullish about the future because, we're looking at within the next 6 months, Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela are all going to be democracies, and it's going to be great for the world. Okay, so now we haven't had one successful regime change, but now you think you're going to get 3 within the next 6 months? It's just nonsense.
Ted Cruz is such a douchebag. Ted Cruz is a douchebag. I mean,
he's just
I can't
ignorant.
even believe that I can't even believe Tucker Carlson could sit with that idiot for more than 20 minutes. I mean, look at the guy. He's on there. I mean, crazy. Let's have we got another clip there? The boys behind the scenes. Have we got another clip?
We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country.
Those are the words of a potential war criminal, right there. And that is not the advice and counsel and direction that any Secretary of Defense should be providing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. It puts them actually in greater danger. The Secretary of Defense is a disgraced major that was kicked out of the D.C. National Guard. He has no qualifications whatsoever to be the Secretary of Defense other than his extreme loyalty to the president. Again, those are the words of a potential war criminal.
Yeah, I mean, you guys. I mean, this is. Notice how this general also called it. He said he's the Secretary of Defense, which is the original title. Of course, Trump and Hegseth, they changed it to the Secretary of War, which is just so over the top. And so again, because it changes it, right? Secretary of Defense, you need to be in charge of your own country's defense. But Donald Trump changed that to the Secretary of War, which I guess is actually more accurate because that's what we do. We start useless wars around the world, and we're certainly, the biggest instigator of war. But again, it just shows you that, he hits the nail on the head. The reason that he's in that position is because of his extreme loyalty to Donald Trump, and that is his qualification. But he doesn't know what he's actually doing. He's not qualified to do that, and it puts American lives at danger. It's incredibly irresponsible and just horrible.
It's amazing what's going on. I mean, renaming the Department of Defense, with what's going on, what's being said, it's almost, if you had a time machine, you could travel 20 years back in the future and write an Academy Award-winning satire comedy about politics and just write word for word what's happening right now. Like what's happening right now, if you were to tell somebody 20, 30 years ago, would be comedy. But this is the reality that we're living in.
But
I
the
want to
movie,
add to that, guys. Yep. I just want to add to that. Like, you heard his speech earlier, like a couple of weeks ago. He said the only thing the Iranians are going to see from the sky is our jets with the stars and stripes and the Star of David on the bottom of it. I mean, what an absolute asshole that guy is. I mean, Jesus.
Well, I mean, his only qualification before becoming Secretary of War was being a live show host on Fox. I mean, we're literally being ruled by bad TV personalities here. We have Donald Trump, a reality TV show host, and we have Pete Hegseth, a live show host on Fox.
Like I said, it's a comedy.
And speaking of comedy, do you guys see that, or you guys know that movie, The Idiocracy? Well, it turns out The Idiocracy was a future documentary, except President Trump is much, much more dumber than President Camacho from Idiocracy. President Camacho was actually a decent guy. Donald Trump, not so much.
Let's play the next clip if we can.
We are now seeking to solve a problem that we created. This is insanity. $2 billion is a lot of money. That's the minimum amount of money that is being spent every single day on this war. There are over a dozen families who are burying their loved ones in the United States, and there may be dozens more if this war continues. Prices are skyrocketing, not just in America, but all across the
Yeah, so just for context, this is Senator Chris Murphy from, I believe, Connecticut. He's been a very, very, I would say one of the more reasonable politicians in America who just have actually become very vocal against Donald Trump. But he just says, here he is, Donald Trump saying we need $2 billion a day to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And again, it goes back to that tweet I had shared earlier where, Trump's stated goal, we need to make sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb. And we need to open the Strait of Hormuz. Two things that were already accomplished, that the United States already had, right? We had Tulsi Gabbard, we had, testimony saying, look, Iran does not have the capability to develop one, nor do they have the desire to develop one. That is what the latest intelligence briefing says in the United States. But of course, that doesn't fit the narrative. And that's what you're seeing in the U.S. government, is that if you don't toe the line, you don't fall in line with what Trump wants, then you're out. And so that's why these politicians are pivoting and now supporting Trump, for this. But again, here's Chris Murphy taking the opposite stance and just saying, look, you've created a global crisis of nothing. Like I mentioned earlier, it's Donald Trump doing the same thing. I'm the arsonist and I'm also the firefighter. And he's going to try to spin this. But just another thing, we talked about Kharg Island earlier, guys. This is a really important point. Kharg Island is where the oil is staged. That's essentially where the oil in Iran gets put onto tankers. There is no oil on Kharg Island. It's just the staging area. So even Professor Morandi, he had said, take Kharg Island. Honestly, it doesn't matter because what happens is if you take Kharg Island and you stop that Iranian oil from getting on the tankers, all it's going to do is send oil through the roof because you're taking all of this oil supply out of the market, supply and demand. Now you're looking at $150, $160 a barrel, potentially even more. And I mean, again, at $150 a barrel, the world economy shuts down. That's over. Global recession.
Yeah, it does.
So
totally. Totally.
It totally. So that's the thing is like we all of a sudden we have this idea. If we could take Kharg Island, game over for the Iranians. The United States declares a victory. We win. No, that makes the situation extremely worse. And so that's why I said it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter. Iranians are not worried about Trump taking Kharg Island, and you get troops on the ground. Whew, the Iranian almost wants that to happen.
Yeah, it's not even about.
And Kharg Island is not the Strait of Hormuz. Even if you take Kharg Island, you're still not opening the Strait of Hormuz, which is a real problem. And the problem with that is right now, United States, they're so desperate to increase the global oil supply. They have to waiver sanction on Russian and Iranian oil. So there's no way that they're going to try to shut down Iranian oil production. I mean, the whole reason they're waiving sanction on Iranian oil is so, there will be more oil available. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
The one thing that everybody is focused on, thank you, Carl, for that. I mean, all of us have great insights on this. I mean, we've all interviewed amazing people, whether it's Scott Ritter or Professor Morandi and others. I mean, it's been an incredible, really exciting, actually, few weeks to get back into geopolitics and do deep dives. But I want to add on this oil thing that a lot of people are really not calculating into this. It's not about the oil that is trying to come out of that area. It's about the VLCCs, the very large containers, these double-hauled and single-hauled tankers that need to get in to get it. The problem here is companies like Maersk and other shipping companies, they've rerouted these. They're on another route. They're cruising somewhere else. They're picking up oil. They're gonna, they'll pick it up from another country or whatever. They're not gonna say, okay, boys, let's take all your crew. Let's go down with those containers and let's sit on the outskirts and just wait. Not at that kind of price and not at that kind of liability. All we have to do is look back in history at the Exxon Valdez when that thing was, damaged, leaked oil into the ocean. That was a catastrophic oil spill. Very, very easily can happen in the Strait of Hormuz. Very easy. But once again, there are ships stuck in there, some coming out. We are hearing 20 million barrels of oil that are decreased. So the IEA says, right, we need 400 million barrels of oil. Okay, that's 20 days extra supply. You got 1.4 total billion barrels of oil in there, in the supply chain, okay, to help relieve the price, which it hasn't. So they pumped 400 billion barrels of oil. Get your calculators out, guys. 400 billion barrels of oil into the system. The price of oil still going up. Now you got, let's say, another billion to go. So, okay, that's another, what, 20, let's see, another 40, 50 days, something like that in the system. That oil was purchased for a spot price of about $33 a barrel. To replace that at 110 is going to be a shit ton of money. But not just that, is they can't get the oil out, but they can't get the containers in. So once all those boats come out, now what? Now what? You're going to be waiting 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 days for these containers to get in there and then do a wraparound if the infrastructure is still in place and coming back out. Now, that's if the insurance companies say, yeah, no problem, guys. We don't mind you doing that. No, the last major oil spill was only the XL Valdez, which costed about $5 billion in cleanup, took 10 years and 15,000 people to do. So no problem. Just take your VLCCs, cruise in there, get the oil. No, we're going to 200. We're going to 200 fast. And as Cyrus has said many a times, guys, and of course, Carl, you added to this, the global economy is in big, big trouble here. And Iran's got the economies by the throat.
But guess whose oil tanker is coming through? Iranian oil tankers are going through, and Iran has been selling more oil now to China than they have ever sold before the war. And now with United States waiving sanction on Iranian oil, Iran is going to even sell more oil at much higher price than before. So good job. Good job for five-dimensional chess, Donald Trump.
China's winning just by sitting it out.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's been the theme of China for the last 12 months. Ever since Trump started his second term, is sit patiently and win. Just you sit patiently, do nothing, and win. That's basically all China has to do. And so, people are saying, hey, there's not a lot of comments from China. Why would you? We've all heard that famous quote. Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. I mean, China's like, okay, hey, Trump, if you want to keep doing this stuff, gosh, it just shifts more global power to us. I mean, more countries are knocking on our door for trade deals. More people are realizing that we're the responsible actor in the room. Guys, I'll share a tweet here that I saw. March 20th, U.S. Treasury issued a 30-day license permitting the sale of Iranian crude oil and petroleum products. You guys have just mentioned that. And somebody had tweeted back, he said, you know, when you F up so bad, you have to pause the sanctions on the country you started a war with. Guys, that's where we're at. I mean, that just sums it up. And again, I think when you just look at this with the cold, hard facts of the situation, it's just remarkable, the propaganda, the misinformation that we're hearing from the Trump administration about this. And again, Iran holds the cards here. Strait of Hormuz is closed, and that's the global checkpoint.
I think on your point about China, I'm sure Carl has seen this because he's a bit of a meme king also. For the past 5 years, there's been that meme where they said that the CIA uncovered a secret China plan where Xi Jinping plans to just sit back and do nothing while he watches the American empire decline. I mean, that's basically what's happening.
It's so true.
Oh, God.
So true. So true. All right, did we run out of clips there, Alex?
I
think we got them all.
Let's see. I think we got all of yours, Cyrus, and thank you very much for the. I just want to say a big thanks to the team that is behind this. We're trying new software tonight. We're coming in there at pretty decent resolution. Next week we're going to uptick it a little bit more. We're going to go to a much higher resolution. I know that is to actually help the viewers really feel more engaged, more with the clips as well. We're going to do a lot more of that stuff. It has been a hell of a learning curve to get it to this point now. But again, great turnout. We have, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 people watching between these channels, and we're only streaming to 5 channels. We have the capacity to go up to about 30 different social media platforms. We'll discuss that with our crew here in the future to see what we want to do. But again, really appreciate everybody coming out tonight to see the new design. We're going to be very consistent on this. We have been for the last month here. And I just want to say, again, congratulations to Cyrus Jansen, who has hit that 1 million plateau. That is the dream of all content creators. Congratulations, my friend. It was absolutely amazing journey with you. And I have to tell you, that journey started many, many years ago. And there's another member on this screen that was there when your journey started. And that is Daniel Dumbrell up in one of the corners of the windows here as well. I'd reached out to Daniel and we talked and he said, yeah, Cyrus Jansen, wow, he's doing some cool stuff. Let's get him on the program. And here we are years later. There's a lot of relationships that happen in YouTube. We help a lot of people out there and people that really enjoy this content and learn a lot about it. It's about us really trying to tell you guys and girls that are watching this program that, hey, the Western media, if we look back 5 years ago, it was a hard battle for us here. But now the momentum is shifting to where you're having guys like Cyrus Jansen outview CNN. I mean, that's a fact. And this is what's happening. I'm going to pass it over to Daniel. And then we might probably go, Cyrus, do you want to go to a 4 screen for the remainder, or you want to bounce down to a 2 screen? Up to you, sir.
Whatever. Let's go to Daniel. Let's hear his thoughts.
Yeah, let's go, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, the social media thing for me was, I guess you could say it was more of a hobby, but it was driven in the beginning by a sense of urgency when I thought Western propaganda had an actual chance of winning. It actually had a chance of undermining China's growth, which would have in turn affected the global south also, because China is one of the best possible exit plans for the global south from this unfair system that they've been stuck in. I genuinely thought that Western propaganda could win. I don't think it can anymore. I think it's done. There's too many people that are switched on, in part because it's just become too obvious now. So I've lost that sense of urgency to make content. I'm so grateful that there are other people still continuing to do that. But yeah, I'd love to continue to join you guys because we have a long friendship and relationship together. I think we should probably open the next show with the song "The Boys Are Back in Town." But
nice.
I'd love to continue.
But you know what? Can I ask this, Daniel? Daniel, I also want to commend you, Daniel. I was looking for information on Hong Kong. You cannot imagine. I had asked for press to, if I could get a press pass. I wanted to travel as a, independent content creator or freelance journalist or whatever you call them, citizen journalists back then. I call us journalists now. But I kept emailing in Hong Kong, and you want to know who responded to me? And I remember, watching your content. Daniel would get into his car and he would drive around the area and talking about what was going on in Hong Kong. And I found at the time that was so engaging. It just was, very powerful. But it was Apple. What was it called? Jimmy Lay's Apple.
Oh, Apple Daily.
Apple Daily.
Apple Daily told me that the only available press had to go through Apple Daily. Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They had a huge Reddit channel, and all arrows kept pushing me back. Apple Daily, Apple Daily, Apple Daily. I said, what's going on? And where's that character today?
Well, he was bankrolling the whole Hong Kong protest. What was this?
Yep.
Now he's in jail. He's in jail for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, have we got one more clip for you, Daniel?
We did. I mean, it would backtracking a little bit. I mean, we could cover it. So we were talking a little bit about democracy. Yeah, this is the clip.
We are a democracy. I'm talking about China, mainland China. China is democracy.
Democracy.
Yes, we're a democracy in our own way with the Chinese characteristics.
So this was a tweet that went out. And people were making fun of it, saying China is a democracy. That's ridiculous. But when you actually think about it, what you have in the West is this system of elect and regret. You're going to elect somebody who is almost certainly going to break whatever promises they're making to you. Whereas in China, you have a system that is continually responding to the demands and needs of its people. You have a complaint hotline in China. It was at 12345, the China hotline phone number. And whatever complaint you make, even if it's about the government, they have to respond to it. They have to do something about it. There's a famous channel on Chinese social media also of this guy in Shenzhen walking around taking video of, structures in Shenzhen, which are, against code or, maybe a part of the sidewalk that is crooked or something like that. And the government follows his channel. And as soon as he's done posting that video, the government goes and fixes the problem that he pointed out. Like, if that's not democracy, I don't know what is. And so I explained that, and I posted a tweet about that. And people responded with, you're so stupid. You can't elect your leaders. That's not democracy. And it's like they can't think outside of this small bubble, that as long as you have that superficial action, and I say superficial because it doesn't actually result in anything, then you're content with that. They're not willing to ask the question, what is the purpose of democracy? The purpose of democracy is to have a government that actually represents the people. So if China is able to do that without a traditional Western liberal democracy, never mind the fact that they do have voting on the lower levels, but we won't get into that. But even assuming they didn't, the fact that the government responds to the needs of its people is exactly what that Chinese diplomat was talking about. That is actual true democracy. But there are so many people in the West that cannot compute that at all, because it has to start with that basic superficial point. I can, vote for the top leader. I can swear at my leader. I can go out and do all of these things. Even if it doesn't actually accomplish anything, that's what democracy is. And it's sometimes, it's just mind-boggling that people can't actually think beyond that. And and maybe for that reason, that's a genius system in the West, because they just need to give enough of these superficial freedoms. They just need to give enough of these artificial pressure release valves so that people feel free, even if they actually have no power whatsoever.
Investor Eric Lee famously said, you can change parties in the United States, but you cannot change policy. In China, you cannot change the party, but you can change the policy. And I remember I first became eligible to vote in the 2000 US election. That was a George W. Bush Gore election. Ever since, people forget now, but George W. Bush came to power promising non-intervention US policy. Every US president after that has promised to be a peace president, whether Bush, Biden, Bush, Clinton, Obama, Biden, Trump, all of them promised they're going to stop endless war. Yet all of them, when in the office, they went to war. I mean, I do think American public are sick and tired of these perpetual wars, and they demand that of their politician. But as you can see, the election didn't change anything, because the politicians, as soon as they got in power, they're beholden to the special interests in the military-industrial complex or to the Israeli lobby. So they do the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, we always hear the same things, right? Elect and regret, and it's kind of funny because I remember having this debate with somebody on Twitter, and they said, at the end of the day, the most important freedom that you have to have is the ability to choose your own leader. That ability to go to the voter's box and choose between two names means everything. And I said, it honestly doesn't, because if your politicians like Carl and Daniel have pointed out, if they're promising no wars and we're going to serve the interests of our people, but then as soon as they get into office, they do the complete 180 and do whatever the hell they want to do, then that's not a democracy. I mean, I agree with Daniel, right? If you have a government that's serving the interests of the people, that is a better form of government. Call it a democracy. Call it whatever you want to call it. I don't care. How about just a better government? Let's just call it that. But I just said, you guys, and so I debated this guy on Twitter. I just simply said, you're so obsessed with this freedom that you get to choose your leader. And guess what? If I don't like Donald Trump, I can say Donald Trump's an asshole. And I said, you know what's better than being able to say that Donald Trump's an asshole? Having a president that's not an asshole, and just someone that can, and that's the bottom line.
I love it.
Right? And so once again, this guy gets ratioed in the comment section, blocks me, and I'm just like, golly, I just want more people to see that. But I am encouraged that. And Daniel, I do want to say, I always like to give you credit because, I discovered your content early and you were a big inspiration for me starting a YouTube channel. So I would just want to say, thanks you for your really early work. And I remember that because you did have that urgency, because at the time there was so much disinformation coming out in Hong Kong, and you're spot on. You were at a point where it's like, guys, like the propaganda and misinformation could actually win. And if it wins, it changes everything. And you took to the streets, you took to YouTube, you worked on it passionately, and I think you made a substantial change. You inspired me to start a YouTube channel because I was like, finally, I'm like, geez, Daniel just hits the nail on the head. He actually is speaking about what's happening on the ground and what the truth of the situation is. And so I just want to say thank you. It's always a pleasure to share the screen with you, Carl and Alex, and just appreciate our many friendship for many years.
I got to tell you something funny because a lot of people know you in China. And, our first live stream that we did together, you told me that. You said that it was because of your content, it inspired me to make a YouTube channel. So every time somebody says, oh, yeah, Cyrus Jansen, I watch him. And I said, do you know, he told me. But secretly, nice. I know that if it wasn't me, there would have been another catalyst because you are amazing at what you do. But I don't say that in the moment. I take the credit. And I tell my,
nice. You should. Basically, I'm responsible for that.
Yeah, I'll do it. But in my heart, I know it would have happened anyway.
No, I appreciate it though. I appreciate you being the catalyst, and I mean, I do kind of share that sentiment though. That I think that that urgency has changed because I do believe, compared from 2019 to now, 7 years later, you start looking at again. There's just so many more people questioning, not believing the mainstream media. And it's kind of interesting because I'm here in Las Vegas. So, for example, I was at my daughter's softball game last night and it's a long game, 2 hours long. All the parents are sitting around. We're all chatting. Of course, gas prices, the economy. And, I just say, guys, I've got a YouTube channel. I cover this on the daily, I'm very switched on about this. But, so many people are just, reaching a point here in the U.S. where a lot of the parents are like, you know what? I just turn off the news now. Like I just can't handle it. I'm just gonna pray that everything gets better. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably not gonna happen. We're kind of in a pickle right now, and it's gonna get worse before it gets better. But I think people have really lost trust in the media. They've really started to question these narratives. They know there's a tremendous amount of propaganda, but there's a lot of frustration mounting here in the United States. And I just cannot see anything but a landslide victory for the Democrats in the midterms. I don't see how Donald Trump survives this at all. We've already started to see in local elections, basically Democrats are sweeping across the United States, even in Mar-a-Lago or Mar-a-Lago. How do you say that? I should know that. I'm from Florida. Wherever Donald Trump's from. Mar-a-Lago. Thank you. I had a Mar-a-Lago. So the Democrat candidate, Mar-a-Lago, yeah, the Democrat candidate, she actually won. So she actually won in Trump's district where he actually lives in Florida, which is, and I think so far there's been 12 local elections for politicians in the United States. All 12 of them have flipped to blue seats. So I think the bloodbath is coming in the election, this midterms. Because there's just no way that Donald Trump is going to be able to contain this all the way to November. I mean, it's just been an absolute dumpster fire.
Yeah,
hey guys,
I totally
want
agree
to give.
With that. Go ahead,
Hey
Carl.
guys, I want to give
Carl.
credit where it's due. Daniel said now the urgency is not there anymore because people are seeing through the mainstream media bogus. I like to give credit where it's due. I like to thank my president Donald Trump for making it happen because I think he of all people, is most responsible to reveal the emperor has no clothes, and he carry out the policies that definitely accelerated the decline of the U.S. empire. And, the whole Iran thing, going back to the Iran thing, now what it has shown is that if the United States cannot take on Iran, forget about fighting China. This is why I actually think, there will actually, the prospect for peace in Western Pacific now is greater than ever because now it shows don't even talk about fighting China. This is just forget it. U.S. simply does not have the capacity. I think that makes the world a much better place.
Yeah, I'll tell you about one of the most important endorsements I got, and it was from my mom. She, before he won the second term, I said that I hope he wins. And the reason is because it will accelerate the world realizing what the American government is actually about and accelerate this decoupling from America. And she thought I was crazy. About 1 or 2 months ago, she sent me a message it was after Carney's speech where he was talking about this need. And she said to me, beautiful. You know what? You were right. It is actually working. But I have to say, though, that when I explain, for example, at my kids' school, there's a Venezuelan family that I'm really close with. And if I say something like that to them, it's a little bit embarrassing to a certain point because it's easy for me to say that I'm glad Donald Trump is the president and he's accelerating this realization because it's to back it up a little bit. No matter if it's the Democrats or the Republicans, they do this stuff all the time. It's just that the Democrats are better at pretending to be the good guys.
Right.
But when you explain that this is short-term pain for long-term gain, that's easy for somebody to say who's not experiencing that short-term gain. When you say that to somebody who's from Venezuela or from Cuba or from Iran, they're actually feeling the brunt for this. So, to a certain degree, it went quite a bit further than even I imagined. Like, who would have imagined that this would have happened? And that's one of, our good friend Ben Norton, he says that to me too. He says, no, because, at what cost? At what you know, how many people are going to suffer in order for this to happen. So it's getting to that point where it's like, yeah, even my wish is, you know, getting a little bit, you know, I'm not sure if it was a good wish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about, you know, the level of propaganda we're seeing here is off the charts. I mean, convincing the American public that it's okay to pull a president out of a sovereign nation in the middle of the night, kill 50 of his guards, shut off the fuel supplies to Cuba. Let's skip over to the Middle East. Let's bomb a country into submission. And, you know, they're very good. America is very good at promotion. They're very good at propaganda. Everybody always says, oh, China propaganda, you know, all these other countries. The Americans are the greatest in the world at propaganda. I'm going to hand this back to Cyrus. I think we're going to wrap it up, gentlemen. It's been an absolutely fantastic show. We do have an outro. Cyrus, I'm going to hand it off to you. Maybe you guys can wind it up and give your last comments. But thank you so much for joining tonight, guys. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Cyrus, okay?
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I just want to say it's always a pleasure to share the screen with each and every one of you. Daniel, Carl, Alex, thanks for your time today. And guys, I think we should run it back again and have that intro. The boys are back in town, you know, and let's make it a regular thing. I mean,
yeah, let's do it again.
Let's keep the chats going. I mean, I think this is important because, you know, people, I think they really enjoy, you know, getting some alternative opinions. We've seen the rise. I mean, there's so many YouTube channels now that are really booming. Even in China, you know, what's encouraging, I'm in this WeChat group with over 500, you know, China content creators. And so, you know, when you're really looking at even China, for example, there is just a plethora of new vloggers and streamers that are taking to Instagram and TikTok and Twitch and all these different platforms. And all of them are really focused on telling China's story. And so it's a very natural, organic movement. I mean, again, 5-6 years ago, there weren't many people doing that content. Now there's hundreds and hundreds more. Again, the travel vloggers. So people are starting to wake up. They're starting to see. But I think it's important that we keep doing the work we do and, you know, keep trying to get that message out as we continue to cover, you know, this Iran war, because as all of the people I've interviewed have talked about, and we all know, this does have a chance to completely disrupt the entire global economy, where at a point where every single household in every single country in the world will be affected from this if this continues to go as south as it is going. So let's stay up to date. But thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. And thanks to all of our amazing our viewers, the super chats that were sent in. Guys, thank you for your incredible support. And a huge thank you to Alex and his team for the video production today. Nice graphics, nice transitions. We're continuing to up the quality here on YouTube.
Anything else, gentlemen, you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, even though I was laughing most of the time, but we are actually facing a very serious issue, global issue right now. You know, any additional time this war lasts is a world marching toward abyss. Like, I mean, literally, because you know, everything is going to be affected. If this war lasts till, say, November, the general election time, you will have been too late. You know, the world economy is going to take a worse hit than COVID. I'm not just being scaremongering, just because so much is depending on you know, having access to cheap energy, and that looks like it's increasingly unlikely. And so far, Trump is moving the country, the United States, toward a Vietnam-style quagmire situation in the Middle East, and that could get much, much, much worse. And you know, there's no resolution in sight right now. This is what really worries me. Now, having said that, it was great to meet up with you guys again. You know, boys back in town. It's good to see Daniel, Cyrus, and Alex. It's always good to pick your brains and listen to your viewpoints. And you know, Daniel, I must say, you also helped me getting started on YouTube, because you got me on your show, and afterwards that's when I realized, oh, there are actually people who like to listen what I have to say. So, you know, thank you.
I'm going to have another story I can tell people on the streets in China where my ego goes like this.
You know, so Daniel's new nickname for the group will be called the Godfather. You know, we're going to call him the Godfather.
No. You guys are great. It's really good to be back together again, and I hope we do more of this.
Yeah, great. Thanks, gentlemen. I think we should wrap it up. We're going to go to an outro. Everybody we'll see you guys in the comment box, okay? And the dude back end, roll that outro for us, buddy. Thank you.